And during this special, we are continuing the conversation by diving deeper into Black history beyond the month of February.
Now, one of the ways that we are doing that is by getting involved with local organizations or going to museums. And that's why we're very lucky to have Dr. Robert Smith and Dr. Robert Davis join us from America's Black Holocaust Museum. While the museum isn't open yet, they are doing things virtually. Great to see you guys. Can you tell us about the history, about how African Americans came to Milwaukee? Many of our communities have roots in the Deep South.
You know, this process called the Great Migration really reshapes the contours of the United States in remarkable ways. Over several decades, from the 1910s through the 1950s and 60s, hundreds of thousands, indeed millions of African Americans migrate to urban spaces of the so-called North, to cities in the South. They're moving from the rural and agrarian-based economy of the South, and they're doing so for two overarching reasons. One is to flee Jim Crow and racial terror, and we have to really call it that. They're fleeing racial terrorism here in our borders. The other goal, of course, is to lead a decent life, to get a decent job in the burgeoning industries of urban spaces, to potentially get a decent education, to maybe be involved in the political process. And so the Great Migration is not only important because of the ways in which it reshapes the conversation about race, indeed it nationalizes racism, it also gives us the racial geographies that we see today in so many of our urban spaces.
Yes, and I think a lot of people oh, go ahead. Sorry about that, Doctor.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to lead you on about all of the excellence and the people that have come from our area that a lot of people don't realize.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that we've highlighted in this particular exhibit is I can tell you that in my years here prior to me coming to the museum and being here at the museum, that I have actually queried probably hundreds of African Americans and asked them where their grandparents and great-grandparents came from, and almost to the person, it was Mississippi. And so, as you can see behind us, there's a chronicle of where blacks started their migration patterns, and as Dr. Smith said, because of economics. And a key factor to this is not only African Americans migrated to Wisconsin because of economics, but all other races and ethnicities did too. Right. Because of the manufacturing boom, and because of this is where the money was during that time. Right. And we left because of the money, but we also left, as he said, because we were being persecuted and lynched and killed where we were in the Deep South. So this exhibit illustrates that. And the thing that also is very, very important is as we continue down this path of being a convener of virtual preparation for programming as we prepare ourselves to open a museum, I want us also to look at some of the documents that have been created around this. And so there are historians like Timmy Black who've talked about two waves of migration, one from the Deep South, one actually from the East Coast that came into the Midwest because of financial prosperity. And I want to just highlight and illustrate that there's a book that actually really changed my perception, and that's a book by Isabel Wilkerson called The Warmth of Other Suns.
The Warmth of Other Suns. Well, you are both a wealth of information. We appreciate you being with us. Drs. Robert Smith, Dr. Robert Davis. Thank you. And anybody who wants to visit the virtual gallery of America's Black Holocaust Museum, you should do so because you will learn a lot. I don't care where you're from or what your position is in life. We're going to take a quick break and be right back.
I'm more excited about people paying attention to Blacks making history right now, because that makes us pay attention to all of the contributions, all of the conversation. It expands our view to where we normally keep our attention to a very narrow space. Black history is American history.
This next story started with a number 2 pencil and a piece of paper. Andrew Little is a Milwaukee native who now designs sports shoes for Nike. He says he grew up without seeing people who look like him in sports apparel design, so he hopes he can inspire others.
If you don't recognize other people in that space, then how will you be able to, attach yourself to that vision?
Last year, Little, who was once a ball boy for the Milwaukee Bucks, designed his home team's city jersey. What an accomplishment there. Milwaukee has a rich history filled with African Americans who were trailblazers in the sports and entertainment world.
Dr. Robert Davis and Dr. Robert Smith back with us now to talk about that history. And, it is just, we're a wealth of history here with people who have gone on to do great things.
Yeah, I can see both of you have moved to another location. Tell us about the exhibit you're at right now.
So this part of the museum talks about entertainers and artists and cultural icons who have either resided in or passed through. And as you know, sometimes you get tongue-tied and you want to name everybody and you can't. But I will highlight the fact that over my shoulder you could see several individuals who were here. But I really want to talk about some of the people that are from Milwaukee that we didn't know about. Like Terrell Shropshire, for example. Terrell Shropshire, whose family was very prominent here. Her father, I believe, was one of the first black executives at Miller. Is one of the only people who is a film editor of color and women of color. George Tillman is also from Milwaukee, who has directed and produced major films. And we all know about John Ridley from 12 Years a Slave, who won an Oscar. And also, Oprah Winfrey has a deep, rich history here in Milwaukee. Doc?
I think it's important for us to not only emphasize the importance of Milwaukeeans and their roles in popular culture and entertainment and in sports, but we also want to think a little more broadly. The cultural arts have always been a vehicle to express frustration. They've always been a vehicle to highlight and celebrate achievements. The cultural arts and sports as well is an opportunity, provides the opportunity for us to see heroes, folks who are on screen, which for the overwhelming majority of the history of the United States, the images of African Americans have been depicted extraordinarily racist. And what we see is over the years, one African American man after one African American woman battling those injustices, battling those challenges, using their format, their media, their mediums to really articulate a level of dignity and emphasize the importance of the struggle, but also to remain very committed and true to what it means to be an African American.
And let me emphasize that point.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I wish we could have more time here to talk to both of you. But Dr. Davis and Dr. Smith, one thing that's been inspiring about all of this, I can't wait to get into the museum when you can open up and we can all come in and talk more about what you're doing there. So thank you for being here and joining us today. We'll be right back.